A warm welcome to you. We're fortunate to have His Excellency, Aizaz Ahmad Chaudhry, with us at the University of Chicago this afternoon. He's speaking today, as my dear colleague Denise Jorgens has said, in the Diplomatic Encounters series on an overview of Pakistan-U.S. relations. Now, we've already heard about the Diplomatic Encounters series. I'd just like to point out that this series was begun in 2015, and it was part of the university's celebration of 125th anniversary. So it's building on a very long tradition of connection to the diplomatic world. But let me make a few comments, particularly about South Asia. As many of you know, the University of Chicago's connections with South Asia long antedate the 1947 creation of Pakistan itself. From the university's opening in 1892, experts on what was then colonial India have held important faculty positions, especially since the mid-1950s with the formation of the Committee on Southern Asian Studies. Our intellectual engagement with the subcontinent has further flourished. Now, as one example, Mr. Chaudhry, you may be pleased to see here an image from 1978. It's an image of one of your predecessors, Sahabzad Ahmad, who was visiting the university and who met with Professor Ralph Nicholas, who I'm happy to say is in the front row with us today, professor in department of anthropology. Well, our distinguished guest and speaker, Mr. Chaudhry, is the 27th ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan to the United States of America, a position he began in March last year. A graduate of the University of the Punjab and the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University, he's one of Pakistan's senior-most civil service officers. Among his most recent postings, he represented Pakistan in the United Nations for more than 6 years in the early 2000s. And he was the ambassador of Pakistan to the Netherlands from 2009 to 2012, an engagement that was the basis for his 2012 book entitled Pakistan, Mirrored in Dutch Eyes. Happy to say that that book is available in our collection, should any of you want to pursue further on Mr. Chaudhry's comments today. Mr. Chaudhry comes to the United States in his current posting from his most recent prior posting as Foreign Secretary of Pakistan in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Islamabad. As Foreign Secretary's responsibility included directing relations with South Asian countries. Now, as you silence your phones, it's my honor to invite His Excellency Aizaz Ahmad Chaudhry to the podium for his speech.
Thank you very much. I must commend and thank the University of Chicago for this opportunity, and in particular, Denise, who has been instrumental in organizing such diplomatic encounters, and Mr. Naik, thank you very much for this introduction. And thank you all for coming on a Saturday. I honestly did not expect such an activity on a Saturday, but when I got the news, I of course welcomed it, because I think one of my passions is always to interact with the younger lot, especially in the academia. Let me preface my comments about Pakistan's relations, about what I see to be the world's state of play. Let me propose a thesis to you that the world, in my view, that we have come to know after the Second World War, that order is changing now. Let me add here that the defining feature of this world order that is changing is the major power competition or rivalry that is emerging. What shape will it take? What will be the new world order? We do not have a clarity yet. Let me elaborate. In the last few months, the United States, which remains a preeminent power in the world, has introduced a number of strategic documents which are very important not only for the United States but also for the rest of the world. I take you back to December 18th when the National Security Strategy of the United States was announced, where it identified that there are three-tier ladder of threat to the United States, the top of which is occupied by China and Russia, middle tier by North Korea and Iran, and the bottom by jihadi organizations. A month later, National Defense Strategy, which flowed from National Security Strategy, was unveiled by Pentagon, in which it was written for the first time that interstate strategic competition and not terrorism will be the primary concern for the United States. Again, it identified China and Russia as revisionist states that wish to change the status quo and displace the United States in Asia. Then came President Trump's State of the Union address, in which he even used the word rivals for rising China and resurgent Russia. Of course, the Chinese and the Russians had their own views to say, so we could see that at the strategic plane, the interstate competition seems to be intensifying. Has it come as a news? Yes. Those of us who have been following these developments are not surprised, at least I am not. If I take you back to 2011, when Asia Pivot was announced by the then President Obama, from this state, it was largely perceived as a China containment policy. At that time, it would be felt that China was rising and some kind of new balance would probably be required. Former Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd alluded to this by saying that the rise of China is like English Industrial Revolution and global information revolution, combusting simultaneously and compressed into not 300 years but 30. The long-standing statesman of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, before he passed away a couple of years ago, stated that the advent of China on the global scene is not just another player, but probably the biggest player in the history of the world. It would require a new balance. We started seeing literature appearing on that, and we had Kurt Campbell write his book, The Pivot, The Future of American Statecraft in Asia, where he called for a new rebalance in Asia. We also saw Richard Haas's book on World in Disarray, that the world order is under collapse and a new world order is emerging, but it was not very clear where would it be headed. And then you had Graham Allison, who was a bit more pointed, and he wrote the book, which is titled Destined for War, where he predicts that China and the United States could end up in a war, provided certain. He's not predicting a war, but he's saying that they could end up in what he calls Thucydides trap. You all heard about it? Thucydides trap? This trap was coined by Mr. Thucydides, who was a general and a historian from the Greek city-states. When he was from Athens, when Sparta, which was the prevailing power, when they saw the city of Athens rise in power, it instilled fear in Sparta and both ended up in war. So he's saying the rise of China could provoke or instill fear in the United States, and both could end up in war. And he goes back 500 years and identifies 16 situations. And and studies them, and he found that 12 of those 16 situations ended up in war. So therefore, he's cautioning that if you want to avoid such a conflict, then such and such steps are to be taken. So that's the kind of literature which is started preparing. So it doesn't really come to you and to us as a surprise. Even Dr. Henry Kissinger, who spoke before the Senate Armed Services Committee on January 25th, spoke about the rifle that he saw is emerging, and the world order that he saw was now about to be changed. So, what do we do with it? How do you handle this situation? President Trump, in his State of the Union address, felt that weakness is the surest path to conflict, to quote his words, and unmatched power is the surest means of defense. A week before his address, Dr. Henry Kissinger, I think in that address that I just referred to before the Senate Armed Services Committee had a slightly different approach to it, and I tend to agree with what he said. He said that in this age of admitted rivalry between the major powers, he recognizes that much, there would be a new balance of power. But then he doesn't stop there. He says that this balance of power, challenge would be that it should not culminate in a conflict. Given technological developments, if it happens, then this would destroy. So he feels that while we may emphasize a lot on balance of power, we must place equal emphasis on difference. To avert that kind of conflict which would engulf all of us. And hence, the efforts such as this are so crucial. You need more diplomacy. You need more such platforms to promote understanding so that people can begin to realize that conflict will end up in a situation which will be detrimental of everyone. But is the world changing only in geostrategic terms? I think the change is far more complicated. I think it is also happening in other domains, in social economic domains. I'll give you a few examples. Free international trade, which we were told for centuries was the best way and a win-win for everybody, and for which the world negotiated for decades through Kennedy round and Uruguay round and Doha round, is now under protectionist trends. We have seen the tariff wars between the United States and China, the United States and NAFTA partners, and the United States and Europe. Immigration, which for centuries was a method to infuse new blood into any society, is now being viewed either as a security threat or an economic. Climate change, the global consensus on climate change is also under question marks. And most of all, the narrow nationalism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, religious extremism, these are they're raising their ugly heads. So the world is changing wholesale. Where would it end? We don't know. People have started predicting, but they're still not there. Even they're not ready to conjecture or not ready to even speculate because it's still in the process, in the flux. Let me zoom into my region where my country is located, South Asia. The situation is not much different either. India and China are in what I call as uneasy peace. India and Pakistan are not talking to each other. Afghanistan, next door to us, remains in deep turmoil. And Iran, the nuclear deal, which was painstakingly negotiated for 10 years, is also under question marks. And the broader Middle East remains in the grip of terrorism. Country after country has been destabilized. So in its world which is changing and in a region which is still in turmoil, how is it that Pakistan has done? I believe in these circumstances, Pakistan has not done badly. Our biggest challenge for the last 2 decades was to fight terrorism. We were in the eye of the storm. And it was not something that we landed up suddenly. It grew out of the geostrategic competition of that time between the United States and Soviet Union. When Soviet forces came into Afghanistan 40 years ago, and the whole concept of Afghan jihad was raised. And when the Soviets left, Americans left, but these militants stayed back in Afghanistan. And after 9/11, when Torabora was bombed heavily, most of them trickled through open porous, treacherous borders towards the tribal areas of Pakistan. And when Pakistan decided to join the US-led coalition, we became a legitimate target for all these militants. So from 2003 to 2014, all hell broke loose for my country. And we used to have terrible times, terrible attacks every day, 150 on the average per month, until the nation said that enough is enough. And we began to challenge these militants. And a consensus was formed through a series of political conferences that violence and terrorism under any pretext is not acceptable. And that enabled the military forces of Pakistan to move into North Waziristan, where all these militants had pulled in, made their training grounds, IED factories, safe havens, sanctuaries, and what have you. And within a span of 3 years, we have been able to secure the entire territory. This is not a small achievement. It came at a huge cost, over 6,000 soldiers, 17,000 injured, 23,000 civilians. It was a huge cost to pay. But the nation was still happy that we have been able to secure the entire tribal areas. The tribal areas which for centuries were kept deliberately without a settled governance by the British India and Russian Empire at that time during the 18th and the 19th century. Today, every inch of that territory has been secured. The militants are on the run. Some of them are hidden, are hiding in our urban centers. The others have fled towards Afghanistan. But we have launched another operation called Rebel Fasad to sniff them out of the urban centers. So we think that we did well under these circumstances. Countries next door to us in our broader neighborhood, which witnessed even half the violence that we witnessed, disintegrated. But Pakistan stands taller and stronger from this crisis. And with better law and order, economic situation started improving and investments started coming in. Bulk of the investments came from China, but so did the Koreans and the Turks and the Europeans, and now corporate America for the last 1 year is going in a big way to Pakistan because they can see that considerable investment has gone into energy and infrastructure. And now is the time for industrial phase, and therefore many of these investors are going to Pakistan. The democratic process in Pakistan is also deepening. The second elected government will be completing its term next month. And we are hoping that the elections will be held in time and the peaceful transfer will take place. Our democratic process, unfortunately, has been interrupted 4 times by interventions. But we are confident that this process will continue. People of Pakistan are discovering that it is noisy, by definition. All democratic processes are. But we think that we are on the right course. The fourth element I would point out for Pakistan would be the youth of Pakistan. We are a young country, more than 57% are below the age of 30. And that is an asset if we use them well and if they are well trained and well resourced. But it could be a liability if we don't do that. So that's the kind of state of play that I wanted to lay down the context. Let me say a few words about Pakistan-US relations now in that context. I believe that this relationship is a very important relationship for Pakistan. We have worked together for 70 years. We have been through very difficult times and come out with successes and accomplishments, be it the 50s or the 60s or the 80s or the more recently 2000s when we were facing Al-Qaeda. And if you don't hear or see Al-Qaeda today, it's because Pakistan and India have worked together to decimate it, the organization that had caused 9/11. So we think that we still have a lot of work to do. The gains that we have made in Pakistan against terrorism, we know that they are at risk. They are tentative because Afghanistan next door is not stable. And we know that if Afghanistan is not stable, the instability will flow again towards Pakistan like it has happened in the past. And therefore, we believe that we want to see peace in Afghanistan. And we understand that for the United States too, it's an important area where peace must return to Afghanistan. It's been a long war for your country. You spent millions, perhaps billions, and therefore you would probably also like to see it stabilize. So the objective is the same. We need to work together on that. We also need to stay at the job that was started, which is to eliminate all forms of terrorism. We know that Daesh and ISIS have come into Afghanistan, so it's important for us to continue to work together. And it's a broad-based relationship. Sometimes this relationship, like what is happening now, is viewed very narrowly. It is sometimes viewed through one lens or the other. It is viewed through the lens of China. Perhaps we are very close to China and therefore we should not be close to the United States. Sometimes it's viewed through the lens of Afghanistan, that Pakistan is not helping the United States and Afghanistan to compete and win that victory. Sometimes it's viewed through India, that India is closer to the United States now than it was, and since Pakistan doesn't have good terms with India, therefore maybe it's not a good relationship, and so on and so forth. But I would say that this relationship should be viewed at two levels. One is G2G and the other is P2P. I think G2G relationship, government to government, has vacillated, but P2P relationship, people to people, has always remained stable. And it has always continued, and in all domains, from education and health to commerce and trade to information technology to agriculture to defense to counterterrorism. So name the area, and the two people have remained connected with each other. United States universities have remained a favorite destination for Pakistani students for decades. Our physicians, thousands of them, have come and made this country their home. Our youngsters working in the information technology, hundreds of thousands of them are connected to Silicon Valley, either virtually or physically. So I think these connections have always stayed there. Agriculture, for example, the green revolution that came in Pakistan in 50s and 60s was through a cooperation born out of UC Davis in California and an agricultural research institute in Pakistan. And even today, there are some leading universities who are working with Pakistan in precision agriculture. So these linkages give me confidence that and the resilience that this relationship, which is passing through a slightly low patch now, will come right back to the normal state. And I'm very confident about it. I personally have spent a considerable part of my career in this country. This is my sort of fourth state. My children grew up here, so I have a very special association with this country. I know that this country stands for a lot more than what appears. I'm an avid reader of American history, and I think what your founding fathers did to you 240 years ago was the biggest gift that your nation could have received. The set of values that we gave to you, the values of democracy and freedom and liberty and law and justice. I think this has what has kept the United States what it is and has made what the United States what it is. And these are exactly the values that people all around the world, especially in my country here, to own up and adopt. So I'm very positively inclined to believe that this relationship is there to stay, and we will need to iron out the wrinkles that have appeared at the moment. I'll pause here, and let's we can talk about it. You have been a wonderful audience. I saw everybody very, very attentive. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Chaudhry. We're going to be opening for this. Is this on? We'll be opening the floor for questions what I would like to encourage people to do is to frame questions rather than having speeches. And I'll forewarn you that if you are going on with the speech, in the interest of having larger number of folks here accommodated, I will be asking for a pointed conclusion to a question. Using my prerogative as the chair and the host, I'd like to begin with a question for you. And this relates to your important comment about the complications always in G-to-G relationships, but the relative stability and positive characteristics of P-to-P, people-to-people diplomacy. I was struck just earlier this year by your foreign secretary's observation that the United States is a friend that always betrays. And unfortunately, or maybe as your duty, it's your responsibility to play in that role as a diplomat in an area where betrayals are an important characteristic. I wonder if you would address the kinds of measures that you see yourself taking over the course of the coming years as ambassador to the United States to mitigate those betrayals or the consequences of those betrayals.
Thank you for this question. There are some people who are skeptic about our continued relations with the United States, and there are people who feel very strongly that the United States is a great friend of Pakistan, has contributed towards Pakistan. I believe the latter is a much larger potent force in Pakistan. I also see that within the United States, there are people who feel that Pakistan has not come up to its own expectations. You know, the president of your country issued a tweet, which was also indicative of the misgivings about Pakistan. But then there are people who don't agree with that approach and who believe that Pakistan and the United States have work to do and can work together. The reasons for this oscillation or vacillation in the relationship could be several. I would count some for you and for the audience. There's a mismatch of expectations. It's a cultural thing. In Pakistan, people believe that if you have a good relationship with somebody, it should earn you enough credits to see you through the shallow patch. A friend in need is a friend in need, that kind of. The United States doesn't work on that basis. The United States works on the basis of national interest and how it sees its national interest. And therefore, the United States coalitions to further its national interests keep changing. So it's not a question of, complete commitment and loyalty all the time. I think this is one. And the second is that bulk of the relationship has also been concentrated on the security domain, where the invisible drives the real. Both sides, then people have to look towards their respective security establishments, where information is not that much available, so the relationship moves in the sort of realm of little or no information, and that also creates this misgivings. We have also seen that a donor-recipient relationship also sometimes hurts, because when a country is donating something, then it generates an expectation that the recipient would then respond according to the expectation, and when those expectations are not met, then there is a frustration. And on the recipient side, it is felt that perhaps the donor wants to use its money and wealth and power to dominate us. So that's another reason. There's also a strategic culture in the United States of strategic leaks through the media, and therefore, when the issues move into public domain, they are more difficult to handle. The difficult issues are generally done through private conversations between diplomats and political leaders. And now in this defining age where information explosion has already occurred, public, much of it happens in public domain, and therefore you just quoted one tweet from one of the leaders in Pakistan, and I just quoted also a tweet from the president of this country. So when you take these matters into public domain, it is difficult then to control the state of relationship. So therefore, it has vacillated for a long time for G2G. But on P2P, that's not the case. In P2P, it's a much more entrenched kind of interaction between the people of the United States and people of Pakistan. And even now, to give you an example, for the last 1 year, when our relationship with US government is passing through a shallow patch, the corporate America is making up its own mind and is going in big numbers. Why and how? I think because they see that there is a good potential for profit in Pakistan, and that's why they are doing it. Similarly, I will give you an example on agriculture and many other areas. In fact, our bilateral trade this year has reached an all-time high, has actually grown. I think these linkages between the two peoples are there, they are strong, they are less noticed because the government relationship is what attracts most of the attention.
Thank you very much for your thoughtful comments here, and of course for your remarks. Particularly appreciated your setting the context of changing world order. So there may be questions that will come from the floor here, either related to the larger issues of world order as it's reforming itself, or the specifics of Pakistani-U.S. relations.
France and Germany were at war for centuries, but then with the European Economic Community and the successor of the European Union, there was a framework for liberal trade, which also kept a great degree of peace. So I wonder whether that might be a long-run vision for how India and Pakistan and other countries could live in more harmony. That might not be Xi Jinping's objective with the Belt and Road Initiative, which might have a more mercantilistic turn, but one could imagine even giving that and including China in a more liberal economic community in South Asia. I wonder what you think of that.
Thank you. There are two thoughts, but let me first address only the first one, which is India-Pakistan. The model that Europe has followed, and I think some other regions are also following, like ASEAN, is a model that has been suggested also for Pakistan, India, and other countries in South Asia. The unfortunate part of Pakistan-India relationship is that deep mistrust has stayed with the two countries since 1947 because of the circumstances in which partition took place. There have been attempts to ride over that. I agree with you that trade is a great peace constituency, peace builder. But the security dimension has dominated the relationship. The acute sense of insecurity in Pakistan that India might aggress it this way. That has somehow defined this relationship. We, instead of going into history, let me just come to the present day situation and why the two countries are estranged. India believes that, that Pakistan has certain elements, non-state actors, who commit terrorism in Pakistan and come back to the safe abodes in Pakistan. So that's India's complaint. And our answer to India is that whenever we want to talk to each other, we see some militants get up and do bad things, and you immediately suspend the dialogue, and thereafter these militants sit back and relax until we make another monumental effort to come together and they spring into action. So why not change this track? Why not we keep talking and we isolate together these militants because these militants are non-state actors who, as I said, were a product of Afghan jihad and for 40 years have dug their roots in terms of charities and other activities. And we need, these non-state actors are no friend of Pakistan, no friend of India, no friend of peace in the region. And therefore, we need to work together and keep talking so that we isolate them rather than they dictate. So this is one element. The second is that of late, when US announced its Asia pivot and had a very close relationship with India, which has now assumed greater strength, it seems to have, and comparing it to the time when the United States used to maintain a balanced approach towards South Asia, this still is seems to have encouraged the present regime in India to try a heavy-handed approach. So they have done so in Kashmir. They are also doing so about Pakistan, or not talking to Pakistan at all under certain conditions. And I think these two factors have made it very difficult to move to the phase that you rightly marked. I think in 1952, when Charles de Gaulle walked up to the country, which had marched its troops on Champs-Élysées, it was a great leap forward for that. And I think some kind of visionary leadership would be required for that kind of peace between Pakistan and India, because the peace will deliver so much to both countries. This gentleman and this wife.
Would you like to step to the microphone?
First of all, thank you very much for being here, Mr. Ambassador. I have two questions that are unrelated, but maybe related. What is Pakistan doing to withstand pressure from Saudi Arabia to align itself against Iran? Because it has been done, like, for example, Rahil Sharif has joined he's the commander-in-chief of the Islamic Alliance, which very much is seen as not an Islamic army, but it's Saudi Arabia's fight with Iran. So why is Pakistan getting involved in that kind of relationship with Saudi Arabia? I know it has done successfully in the past to not participate in its fighting in Yemen. So that's one question. And actually that at the cost of relationship with Iran, which you mentioned earlier. So why would Pakistan make such a decision when Rahil Sharif would take that position? And then the second is, what is Pakistan doing to, you mentioned that Pakistan is a young country. So what is Pakistan doing to improve or to invest in human development and extreme influence in Pakistan from, let's say, extreme education in madrasa? And what is Pakistan doing to improve and so that in the next 10, 20 years, the young generation will come up with an enlightened vision? Thank you so much.
Thank you for your questions. Saudi Arabia is a very close country for Pakistan, has always been, is home to two holiest shrines for the Muslims, for Muslim world, and for the people of Pakistan. It has over 2 million Pakistanis living and working in Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia has always supported Pakistan throughout the history, and therefore we have very close ties with Saudi Arabia. Iran, on the other hand, is a neighbor and has had a deep Persian imprint on the culture of Pakistan, not only in Pakistan, but the entire Indian subcontinent. And therefore, for Pakistan, it has always been painful to see these two countries have a tense relationship. We have always urged both sides to not to land in a situation which would be active live conflict, because that's going to hurt these two countries and the Muslim world. Both countries are leaders of the Muslim world, very important players. And therefore, that's the role Pakistan has always played. Pakistan does not take sides because we cannot afford to take sides. We also have a sectarian mix in our country. We have Sunni population, which is the majority, but we also have a Shia population. And therefore, we always believe that that our relationship with Saudi Arabia and Iran should always be a balanced relationship. And we have participated in Islamic Military Alliance, but if you notice, the name of that alliance has been now changed to an alliance of Muslim countries to counter terrorism. It has been focused only on terrorism, and we believe, when we have said so, that if there is ever any threat to the territorial integrity of Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, the people of Pakistan will stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of Saudi Arabia. So that aspect for us is very, very clear. But we certainly don't want to take any sides, and we certainly don't want these two countries to have any kind of conflict. The human development part is important. You are absolutely right. And within that, you mentioned education. I think education is and should be the primary focus of any government, my government included. We have had the difficulty of, again, a byproduct of Quran Jihad, when we have still several thousand madrasas in Pakistan. Many of them have reformed themselves, but some of them are still involved in extremist activity. So therefore, we launched a national action plan, which was focused primarily on addressing that mindset, which gives rise to extremist behavior, and some of which is germinated in these madrasas. So therefore, that is a job, that is a work in progress. Are we there yet? No, far from it. We still have to go a long way. And I think it is also incumbent on the people of Pakistan to continue to raise their voice for human development for themselves, and to bind their governments that they attach the highest priority to this particular area. There are enough good people here in this country who are also voicing the same, and there are enough good people in Pakistan who are voicing the same. And probably as an ordinary citizen of Pakistan, I would also feel much more empowered if my government pays more attention to the social sector development in Pakistan.
So my question is that, like, you said that there's no terrorism in Pakistan. So I'm Pakistani, but I saw people getting killed. They're getting kidnapped. Why doesn't the government think about that? Why doesn't the government, like, help them? They don't even give money. So.
Thank you. Thank you. If you heard me, you would have noticed that I explained the situation in which my country got landed due to geostrategic rivalry of that time. And we suffered. We suffered. It was not our war. There was a big debate within our country whether it is our war. Until 5 years ago, there was a religious party whose leader felt that soldiers of Pakistan are not martyrs and Taliban are. It's a matter of record. Until people got together, and when innocent children like you studying in Peshawar school in December 2014 were mercilessly killed, that's where the conscience of the nation was shaken, and everybody came to it together to the conclusion that militancy and terrorism and extremism of any form is not acceptable. And I think we have come a long way now. We've come a long way, and Pakistan has reversed this tide of terrorism at a time and in a region which is still grappling with it. And I cannot agree more with you. There should be ideally, there should be no terrorism at all. There should be no killing. And that's the aim that we are trying to pursue. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. Thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure listening to your thoughts. My question is in the context of the Chinese influence in Pakistan, particularly given the investments with CPEC. And you mentioned the uneasy peace between China and India and the admitted rivalry between China and the US. So in that context, I just wanted to ask how you envision Pakistan balancing ties between these three countries, particularly given that often their interests in the region don't overlap.
Certainly. China has been a very close friend of Pakistan, has always been, but this has largely been a political relationship. It is only recent times that we have seen the political goodwill translate into economic projects. So we have the China-Pakistan economic corridor which has emerged. We have to see the genesis of how this is, because the idea has been around since early 90s. Why is it that it has happened now and not before? When President Xi came to power in China in 2013, he changed the model of development and growth in China. And he shifted from the growth-led model, which was overheating the economy to 9 to 10% of growth rates, to mobilization of domestic consumer market and developing the regions which are not developed. So that took him to Western China, which was far less developed than Eastern China. So he started making investments there. But the problem was that any product which was produced in Western China had to travel 5,000 kilometers overland to Eastern China, where all the ports were located, and then go around another 8,000 kilometers through Malacca Strait and Indian Ocean, come to Red Sea or the Persian Gulf, or the Gulf. And that's where, the idea came that perhaps it might be a much shorter route to go from Western China through Pakistan to Gwadar. The distance between Kashgar and Gwadar is 2,000 kilometers, which is 11,000 kilometers shorter than the other route. And therefore, it made perfect economic sense for Chinese to think of this project. For Pakistan and Pakistani leaders also, it became a very important project because the western part of Pakistan is far less developed than the eastern part of Pakistan. And this route was passing through Gilgit-Baltistan, KPK, northern areas, and then through the Balochistan province. So it made perfect economic sense for Pakistan also to go for it. And we did. Investments have come into it. Some countries may not be happy about it. But I believe that in due course of time, this corridor should blossom east and west. In fact, in west, probably Afghanistan will be the first beneficiary of this, because if you go up north from Gwadar, the very first stop actually is the Kandahar province of Afghanistan, and therefore they will be direct beneficiaries of it. Central Asians are very excited, so they all came to Pakistan, their leaders, on 1st of March last year. And they were very excited because they have been landlocked for a long time. So they see this route to be used by them for their imports and for their exports. In fact, it will connect to the Eurasian landmass. I believe that in due course of time, if our Pakistan's relations with India also improve, probably this would become a main artery for use by India as well. India has its own objections to it. India has its own equation with China, and has registered with its opposition to not only China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, but also the Belt and Road Initiative. That is for India and China to sort out. We believe that connectivity in Asia, which has been the continent which was the least integrated continent, is a great blessing. I believe that every avenue of connectivity should be supported and expanded, because it will bring prosperity to the people, regardless of the politics involved. The Belt and Road Initiative, for example, touches 68 countries from Asia and Europe, and I think it will benefit so many people. I believe and I hope that China and India will settle their own issues. The Indian Prime Minister was in Beijing yesterday. I hope that China-US rivalry and India siding with the United States and Pakistan siding with China, this kind of alignments will not sharpen. I hope it doesn't go in that direction. 40 years ago, when two superpowers called, Soviet Union and Pakistan and United States, Pakistan sort of suffered, Afghanistan suffered, we came in the vortex of it, and this time around, if the same is to happen, we don't want to be there again. So we believe it's about time, like I said in the initial remarks, like Dr. Henry has also advised us in his same voice, that we need a lot more diplomacy than these strategic games.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here and speaking to us. So in your address, you mentioned that the G2G relationship between Pakistan and the United States can sometimes be strained a little bit, especially given when the governments of the United States and of Pakistan start releasing things. So instead, the relationship mostly relies on P2P. However, given the large, wide-scale rise in the United States of nationalism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, and a perceived security threat from overseas, how can you be confident that the P2P relationship, which appears to be the backbone between U.S. and Pakistan relationships, will maintain, especially given the additional strain under the Trump administration?
Thank you. It's a good question because the forces that you mentioned are here in the United States as well. But the United States is a late arrival to see these forces. They were already prevalent in Europe, for instance, and in other parts of the world. The world as a whole will have to grapple with them. Just see the situation. The other day I was watching this serial Genius about Albert Einstein's life when he was in Germany. And they were showing the period of between the two world wars. After the First World War, the forces of, or the concept of nationalism was rising in Germany. And you could see that Einstein and others were getting uncomfortable about it. But it was a very quiet debate. And slowly and gradually it shows how it gained momentum until Hitler came to power and he rode the wave of that. So we have to be really very careful about it. And that's why I use the word narrow nationalism. Because narrow nationalism is antithetical to globalism. This world has become far too connected than to be divided again. Remember that book by Tom Friedman, The Flat World. He thought that this is now a flat world. There was a time when Soviet Union and the United States, the Cold War ended, and there was a euphoria, and there were mega conferences in the United Nations, from child to women to environment to habitat, and there was an attempt to build a socio-economic global normative framework for the whole world. The world was actually moving in that direction. Unfortunately, these trends are a departure from that. But my sense is that this is more of an aberration than the ultimate direction. There is a big risk. There is a risk that if we don't stem these forces, in my country, in the United States, in Europe, elsewhere, then the world as a whole will suffer because we are far too connected with each other. So if one part of the body will hurt, the other will also hurt. Therefore, it is extremely important that we don't succumb to these forces. And the people-to-people context actually should be used to overcome these very forces. I hope, I cannot say whether it will happen, but I surely do hope that that would be the case, not only for Pakistan, US, but for the United States relationship with almost every other country, because it's a country of immigrants.
Thank you.
We have time for one more question before we're going to break. And as you may have noticed coming in, there is food for reception and an opportunity for informal conversation following this more formal part of the presentation. So one more question, please.
Hello, thank you so much for being here today. So you talked about how America's tilt towards India at the moment is preventing the achievement of a peaceful solution between India and Pakistan. And you also talked about how China's relations with Pakistan at the moment are a lot more friendly than China's relations with India. Would you believe that that China's tilt towards Pakistan would also be having the same effect as what we spoke about with regards to America and India?
United States has announced two strategies, national security strategy and national defense strategy. It is about to announce another strategy, which is called Indo-Pacific strategy. The objective of that strategy is that the challenges that arise from the Pacific Ocean and Indian Ocean should be integrated or dealt with in an integrated approach. Some people are worried that this approach could lead to sharpening of the alignments that you spoke about. The alignments of US, India, China, Pakistan. That would be disastrous for our region. That would be disastrous for the whole world. And that is why it is extremely important that we don't go that way. It might well happen. I'm not saying it won't. It might well happen. But I think the world must realize that in the last decade or so, the world has also discovered another phenomenon, which is that you have issue-based coalitions. On a particular issue, countries A, B, C are allies, and on another issue, countries B, C, and D are allies, even if A and B are enemies. So there's a issue-based coalitions which are being formed, which could also be one way to counter these alignments. Honestly, I don't know the answer. I hope not. I hope we don't go in that direction. And that is why I have been arguing a lot here that Pakistan should have good ties with the United States. Pakistan should have good ties with China. Pakistan's relations with China and Pakistan's relations with the United States should not be a zero-sum game. That we want equally good ties. That we were a bridge for China, United States to China 40 years ago. We are that bridge even now. And so it is in that direction when corporate America started going to Pakistan, I felt happy about it. Because like somebody asked right in the first place, if you have investment, if you have trade, this is actually great peace project. So I sure hope that the world would realize how, I don't see that awareness as at the moment. People have really not paid that much attention to how the world is changing. But there are enough sane people, as Abraham Lincoln said when he wrote a letter to his son's teacher, that teach him that for every enemy there is a friend. Teach him that not all men are just and not all men are truthful. But for every scoundrel there is a hero. So I am banking on those heroes. And there are enough of them in this country, and there are enough of them in my country and other countries who would see the wisdom of win-win solutions rather than these alignments that you just spoke about.
Thank you.
Before we joined you in the Assembly Hall, I had the opportunity for a brief conversation with Ambassador Chaudhry, and at that time you shared with me the prospect of a book forthcoming. You're working on a larger statement based on your career and also your experiences. I know based on what you said, shared with us today, that we have something important to look forward to that's going to address questions on the global order, of course, Pakistani and U.S. relations, and also those things that link into the SARC area. So I look forward to your book. For now, we'd like to thank you very much for being with us, and we look forward to an informal conversation with you over a repast here.
Thank you very much. I must say that this country, United States, remains a global leader. I think it has shown global leadership. It has shown that it has a lot more to offer to the world, and therefore my country is deeply interested in maintaining ties with the United States to strengthen it. I'm a little surprised that nobody asked about Afghanistan, but that's fine because I speak about it all the time. So God bless you all. God bless America and God bless Pakistan. Thank you very much.